I wanted to tell you how it came about that a Ming Chinese fleet sailed to Africa sometime between 1431 and 1433 during the reign of the Xuande Emperor. It was in fact the seventh and the final of a series of great fleets that had been sent out from Ming, from the southern capital of Nanjing, on journeys between 1405 and 1433. It began under the Yongle Emperor. The Yongle Emperor, who had usurped the throne in 1403 from his nephew, the grandson of the founding emperor of the Ming. The Yongle Emperor was the son, one of the sons of the founder. Let's begin with just the physical facts about this fleet. The first fleet that was sent out in 1405 had 317 ships. Some say only 250, with 27,000 men on board. An officer corps of 93 commanders, 104 battalion commanders, over 100 company commanders, almost 200 druggists and physicians, one for every 100 men or so, an uncertain number of translators into the various languages that would be spoken along the way, and craftsmen. There were 4 treasure ships, as the largest ships were called. These were the largest wooden ships that have ever been built in human history, at least to this point today. The length was around 400 feet. They displaced, when they were empty, about 4,000 tons. When they were long tons, nautical tons, when they were full, they displaced around 13,000 tons. The best speed they sailed at was around 6 knots. They had watertight, bulwarked compartments. They were double or perhaps even triple planked, 9 separate masts, the tallest being 200 feet tall. The sail would have covered around 12,000 square feet, would have weighed 20 tons. Tremendously stable ships, seaworthy ships that would sail south with the monsoon winds and return north with the monsoon winds. Compare this with the greatest wooden ship that the English Navy ever built, the HMS Victory, Lord Nelson's ship, launched in 1795, 104 guns on it, his flagship. It took around 2,500, 6,000 trees to build Lord Nelson's ship, the HMS Victory. It took 7,500 to 12,000 trees to build a treasure ship. The dry dock to build one of these ships was as big as the football stadium at Harvard. And there were other ships, horse ships, 340 feet by 140 feet. The supply ships, 250 or 60 feet by 115 feet. Compare this to the ship that Columbus sailed across the ocean with to discover the New World in 1492, the Santa Maria. The Zhenghe treasure ship was 400 times the size of Columbus's ship. And the man in charge, he was a Muslim from China. He was a eunuch named Zhenghe. He became rich and famous from his voyages. In fact, to honor his father, he planned to cut an extraordinarily large stone out of a quarry and have the story of his father inscribed on it. The stone is still in the quarry. It was too large to move, 135 feet long, 45 feet wide, 12 feet thick. In any case, Zhenghe sailed his fleets to Southeast Asia, to South Asia, to India, Sri Lanka, Arabia, and finally, on the last voyage, part of the fleet went to Africa. Around the time, a little bit later, but around the time that Zhenghe was sailing his fleets through the seas, Prince Henry the Navigator in Portugal was launching sets of fleets to explore mainly the west coast of Africa. Now, this has been celebrated in Western history. When I was a student, I remember reading about Prince Henry the Navigator, the advances in maritime technology and navigation that came with him, the dawn of an age of discovery, a century of discovery. Well, that's hardly true. Both the Yongle Emperor and Prince Henry were drawing on knowledge from the Yuan period. But now the bridge, the land bridge between Europe and East Asia had been cut. The remnants of the Mongols still occupied Central Asia, making it very difficult to travel back and forth. But were the purposes of Henry the Navigator and the Yongle Emperor the same? Hardly. The Europeans were going to places they might have heard of, but did not know about. They were, in fact, trying to discover. The Ming was going to places it knew about. It wasn't sailing to discover. It was sailing to show the flag along well-established routes, to announce the power of the Ming dynasty and of the current emperor. They were inviting others to pay tribute. They were not seeking new knowledge about others. They were demonstrating their power. They were settling their disputes. They were, in fact, an armed force. They had cannon, but they didn't use it really to fight on sea. If necessary, they would launch soldiers, marines, onto shore to fight their battles. We have a stele, that's one of these stone monuments, that they erected in 1409 in Sri Lanka. An interesting stele. It comes in 3 different languages. The Chinese text praises the Buddha. The Tamil text praises the local version of the Hindu god Shiva. And the Persian text praises Allah. The Zheng He voyages stopped in 1433 under a new emperor. But why? They were successful. They established Chinese supremacy in the seas. They brought countries into Ming to pay tribute. They were stopped, it seems. The best explanation is not because China was turning inward or didn't want to have anything to do with the outside world. Hardly. They were stopped because they cost too much money, because people in the government called for austerity. They felt the administration of the emperor, the Yongle emperor, was spending too much money on these fleets, too much money on the northern border in his campaigns against the Mongols, and they called for austerity. It's in the aftermath of this that the Great Wall is refurbished along the northern border to keep the foreigners out. A great fence, one might say. It didn't work, by the way, but it was built. Shutting down overseas relations for private trade, breaking relations with Japan, these were all the results, not lasting results, but the more short-term results of stopping the expeditions abroad. But why did they go to Africa? I said I would tell you why. Well, the story goes like this. When the fleet got to India, one of the, I guess the 6th fleet got to India, they found an ambassador there from an African state on the east coast of Africa. And that ambassador had with him 2 very, very strange animals. When Zheng He's fleet got there, they saw these animals and they said, these animals must be unicorns. Now, they hadn't seen unicorns, but they knew about unicorns because long ago Confucius had seen a unicorn and says, unicorns only appear when there is a sage in the world. And it turned out that the Ming emperor had, back home in his capital, a zoo, a park, where they collected the rare plants and the rare animals from around the world, or from around the world that the fleet had sailed to. And they said, you know, this is a unicorn. It's a sign that our emperor is a sage. We know something about this because the emperor then proceeded to invite people to the palace to come and view the unicorn, to write poems and to paint pictures of it. And we actually have a picture of the unicorn. You'll see it in a moment. But first, let me tell you why they knew this must be a unicorn. A unicorn is a benevolent beast. It's not a carnivore. It's a peaceful beast. In this case, this animal ate leaves off of trees. And when they looked at the animal, they said, well, it's a little bit unusual. We didn't expect a unicorn to have a neck quite that long, rather a long neck on this unicorn. But we'll take him anyway. And so they persuaded the African ambassador to keep one of these unicorns for their emperor and to come with them back to the capital to give it to the emperor. And the ambassador agreed. I don't know if he had a choice in the matter. He got there, and after a couple of years, he said, you know, I'd really like to go home. Oh, by the way, what do you think the unicorn was in fact?